And a good morning, Eagle fans. It is a Tag Tuesday here on Birds 365 with Tag or franchise tag. Today is the deadline for those teams who are still considering using it to give it out or hold on to it for another 365 days. That's just one of many things we're going to talk about today on Birds 365. It's the Mac guys, McMullen and McDonald. One of those days on the calendar of note, Johnny Mac, because as I just stated, franchise tag deadline is today. So I'm going to start by asking you the same question I asked my buddy Brennan Lee Gouton on WIP last night. Percentage chance, and I know it's low. How low can you go that the Eagles use the franchise tag on someone today? I think the only true candidate is CJ Gardner-Johnsons. I don't think anybody else got a prayer to get a franchise tag. So Chauncey or not, the percentage chance that Howie Roseman chooses to slap a franchise tag on one of his players?
I would say 10% or potentially a little bit less. He doesn't like to use it. But I find it hard to believe that's the player he's going to use it on. People, I mean, it's just the history of this team. Good player,
so
but
a safety. You're saying that Howie Roseman's not something as quote unquote big as the franchise tag.
It's I look at Marcus Williams. I brought it up yesterday on the show, and the Eagles bailed out, and he got 5 years, $70 million. So essentially $12 million a year. Now it's kind of built in a little bit, but it's kind of built in that the numbers are going to go up a little bit each and every year, and the salary cap goes up. So you expect the safeties to make a little bit more. I think the franchise tag is $14.4 million. I don't think two things: the value of the position, number one, that's a big part of it, and the second part is I don't know if he's that type of player. I don't know if he deserves to be the top paid safety in the NFL. Where are the Eagles on that? Obviously, they traded for him. Obviously, they want him back. Obviously, it's one of those situations where it's a difficult decision for them, but I just don't see the position and the player. I don't think he's top of the line at that particular position. I know he's coming off. I talked about leverage. He's coming off a tremendous season. I'm not downgrading that. Playmaking a player, and that means something rather than sort of just the functional, is going to do everything right type of player. I think there's value to somebody who's a playmaker, and Chauncey's certainly that. Boy, I'll be shocked if they put it on him. In other words, this is pretty much where I come down, Joe.
Yeah, functional safety is the other free agent safety that the Eagles have. Marcus Epps would fall into that category, and no one's talking about giving him a franchise tag. And maybe this is foolish thinking on my part, but I think it's got at least niggle in the back of Howie Roseman's mind. They could really get shut out here. They could watch free agent after free agent after free agent walk out the door. If they think Hargrave's going to be too expensive, Bradbury's going to be too expensive, and Tim McMahon is putting rumors out there that the Browns are willing to pay heavy for Brandon Graham, and Fletcher Cox could be elsewhere. They could watch a stream of free agents go out the door. At least with the franchise tag, you're locking in one guy. If you can't get a contract done, and they've been negotiating with who they've been negotiating with, and I'm getting nothing. You got better sources than me that they're actually making progress with guys or getting close with. I know none of the Eagle free agent that would fall into that category. So if you slap the franchise tag on, at least you know, all right, we got one. It's better than zero. If zero is what you're sitting on right now, and that's what they are with free agents. We had the lengthy conversation about Howie admitting that he did business differently this year because he didn't want to mess with the mojo of the team off to the undefeated start. And now they've got to pay the price for that and try and pull off all these deals. If you get one done, one is better than none, is it not, Johnny Mac?
Yeah, but I mean, I don't have any doubt the Eagles are going to bring certain players back. I don't think they're going to get shut out. So that's number one. Now, it might not be the players the fan base wants, but when you talk about all their free agents, and I talked about sort of the one or the other group, TJ or Kaiser, Chauncey or Marcus, Javon or Pletcher, Isaac or Jason Kelsey, which has more to do with retirement, obviously, for Jason. They're going to get players back. There are certain players they're probably not going to get back. James Bradbury probably leading that list. I think everyone understands that. And we'll see where the market goes, but CJ, because he's so much, that's the second part, Jody. I should have brought that up. I don't think he's going to get the money people think he's going to get on the open market for two reasons. One, big personality. I mean, big personality, and that scares people. Right or wrong, that scares people. It scared the Saints, to be blunt. And they had him in the building. There are only certain organizations. Then you come back to what he did, with the tweet and deletes about the defensive coordinator. So think about that from another team's perspective, Jody. And that's probably why his agent was probably on the horn right away and said, look, CJ, please take that down. This guy had a career year, whether you want to give Jonathan the credit or Denard Wilson, who's now gone, or Chauncey himself, whatever. He had a career year, whatever you want to place and the player deserves more credit always than anybody else. But the point is, after that type of season, he's still throwing coaches under the bus. There's no other way to look at it. And how does that framework look to another organization, to another defensive coordinator, to another head coach? Because it's unlikely, as I always go, the regression to the mean theory, it's unlikely things are going to go as well next season, even if he stays here. It's very unlikely. And when is that frustration going to bubble up to the surface of this big personality? I don't think he's getting $14.5 million on the open market, is my point, Joe.
Fair enough, but I will say this, and you and I have both been around this game long enough, and you're closer to coaching staff guys because you're in the locker room, you're there every single day. Oh, there are coaches out there that say, give me the talent. I'll coach them up. I'll work with them. I'll get the most out of them. I'll smooth off those rough edges of foolish things they says on social media. Always give me the talent. I'll deal with everything else in whatever way that I need to. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I guarantee you there are guys in the league that are ready to say, when someone comes in with a pay, well, do we really want to give him $14 million when he's a big personality, as John McMullen describes him accurately? So, there's coaches will go, yeah, give me the talent.
Hey, Nick Sirianni's one of them. Nick Sirianni's one of them. Yeah, I agree with you. Our buddy Marcus Hayes, who I tried to get on the program, but he had something to do, and he was on with the afternoon guys, so people should check that out on the JAKIB Sports YouTube page, youtube.com/@JAKIB Sports. But Marcus did the piece on Denard Wilson and whether it was fired, whether it was mutual, whatever. If you get past that and go into the depth of the column, part of it was about Chauncey and that personality and Denard Wilson keeping him in step. Big personality. And you better have confidence. And you're right. There are certain coaches who have confidence. There are certain coaches who don't and are not in a position to take that on. And the lesser, options you have, what's the thing when making a deal? You want as many people bidding to bump up the price. The more you close that, the more unlikely it is to get to the number you want. The Eagles don't use the franchise tag in general. We all know that. Is this the player they're going to use it for? I just find that hard to believe, but we'll know at 4:00 this afternoon.
Right. If you are judging what the Eagles done over the last decade, the answer is no. Of course they're not going to. They haven't used it in a decade. Why would they use it here? Because this is a different situation. The Eagles have more free agents coming into this offseason than they've had in the Howie Roseman era. And the reason is, as he explained to us in Indianapolis, they went off their usual modus operandi. They didn't attempt to extend anybody because they didn't want to have to pick and choose and create a dynamic in the locker room that might not keep the mojo going the way it was when they were undefeated. So I think you have to view it through that light. It's not, well, they haven't done it in 10 years. No, just this year. What is sitting in front of them? What evaluation do they have to make? How do they have to do a roster build going into 2023 with all these free agents? That's the reason why I'm not putting it 0. When I had Brandon Lee Gatton on last night, he said 0. Not 0.0001. He went flat 0, no chance.
I probably went too high at 10%. I like Brandon 0. I'm not going to go 0 because I never like to go 0, but
right, same
because
here.
there's always strange circumstances, but it's unlikely. I think that's pretty clear. And I think your assessment of you don't want to get shut out, well, that's kind of baked in. You're not getting shut out. I mean, there are players that want to come back. I still think Brandon's going to be back. I don't care what people say about Cleveland. And don't get me wrong, Jim Schwartz loves Brandon Graham. Loves him. You know who Cleveland also has? Andrew Berry and Catherine Raish.
Right.
You know who they learned under? Partially, not all, but partially, Howie Roseman. Now, Brandon has tremendous history here. He doesn't have history in Cleveland. He's also going to be 35 in early April. It doesn't make any sense from a roster building perspective unless you consider yourself a contender, a real contender. Can you honestly look at yourself as the Cleveland Browns and say, hey, we're a real contender?
Well, they're going to sell it that way to Brandon.
Well, they might because of
then
Deshaun
you have to
Watson.
do your own evaluation, but they're not going to go in and, hey, Brandon, we want you to help us elevate from being a team that had no chance to make the playoffs last year because of Deshaun Watson's situation to a team that's got a shot. We think we have a shot to be a wild card team. Yeah, that's not going to
No. You misunderstand.
No,
you misunderstand what I'm saying, Jody. I'm not talking about the recruitment of Brandon Graham. I'm talking about the Cleveland Browns and their self-evaluation process of why would you want a 35-year-old defensive end who has no history with you? So you kind of leave out the leadership parts that are so important here in Philadelphia, other than Jim Schwartz likes him, knows him, and all that kind of stuff. If you're Andrew Berry and you're being honest with yourself, if you're Cat Race and you're being honest with yourself and building a football team, you don't consider yourself a contender. If you're not a contender, you're not signing 35-year-old defensive ends to get over the top. I'm not talking about the recruitment. I'm talking about they got to be honest with themselves, and they don't need 35-year-old defensive ends.
All right, I'll play devil advocate again. If I'm Andrew Berry, you bring in Brandon Graham, and you put him around all the young talent you have on your defensive line. You put him around the defensive guys you do have on, even down linemen, linebackers, safeties, for leadership purposes. That he's going to come in and he's going to help these guys grow and let them see what it takes to become a Pro Bowl level player in the National Football League, that you're paying a price to get his experience, to bring him into your room so that by him being around those guys and talking those guys up, even after when Brandon's gone, and I think it'll just be a one-year deal, so it'll probably be one and done, that you've improved the mindset of some of your other players that you're going to have in the room who are going to outlast Brandon Graham.
Well, look, Brandon can help anybody. I mean, Brandon's one of those guys who truly is, just sort of sweats leadership. I mean, he's going to bring in, but you already got a 27-year-old all-pro defensive end there, who you can look to and say, hey, do what Miles does. As far as that perspective, I just don't think it makes sense from Cleveland's perspective where they are roster building. And, oh, by the way, Brandon wants to stay here. So I don't see Cleveland coming in and saying, oh, we're going to give Brandon Graham so much more money than the Eagles that he can't turn it down. From Cleveland's perspective, it just, other than the Jim Sports connection, who loves him, and why wouldn't he? It doesn't make sense for where Cleveland is.
All right, I know it's been more than a decade, and this will annoy people when I roll it out there, but the last time I remember that speech being made, there's no way he's going to leave. He's too tied to the team. He's older. He's not going to want to go. And next thing I know, it's B-Doc coming in to play for the Denver Broncos at Lincoln Financial Field. So it does happen. Guys that you don't think can go anywhere will go anywhere. He's made his entire career, and then he's in another uniform. Sorry to bring that up, but it's a fact.
No, it happens. It happens all the time. You think about some of the legendary players, whether it's your guy Joe Namath limping around in a weird looking uniform, Emmitt Smith in an Arizona uniform. And that's another part. It usually doesn't end up well. Brandon's been pretty consistent. He wants to play 15 years and he wants to finish here. Whether it happens or not, I'm not saying, I'm not closing the door on him leaving, because he said also it's more important for him to get to 15 than it is for him to finish in Philly. He wants both, but he wants 15 more. He wants 15 seasons. So if the Eagles say, you know what, we don't want a 35-year-old defensive end. Thanks for the memories. It's possible, but I just don't see Cleveland's, if they were a legit contender, I could see it. I could see it 100%. But boy, they're lying themselves if they think they're a contender, especially in the AFC. In the AFC, remember, not the NFC where you can jump up. But you never know.
Oh, I don't know how much they'll be lying to themselves or how much they'd be lying to BG. But if they want the player, you do what you got to do to get him. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We're Mac and Mac here on Birds 365. The combine is officially wrapped. Yes, it's transition tag Tuesday in the NFL, and we'll get the thoughts on will the Eagles use the transition tag with our next guest. But he's been put up some great stuff from the combine this week, opinions on the players that the Eagles should be looking at, could be looking at, maybe drafting by the time we get to April. Tommy Lawler from EaglesBlitz.com, longtime Eagle reporter, is going to jump aboard with us. He's next here on Birds 365.
Go to get your game